I didn't realize my quiet little suburban war was about to start with the sound of a clipboard hitting wood. Not a gunshot, not a car crash, just this sharp, plasticky thwack that somehow managed to sound both petty and incredibly important at the same time. At that moment I was inside, pacing around my empty, echoey living room, trying to convince my mother over speakerphone that I had not ruined my life by buying a house in the suburbs. "Mom, I'm telling you, it's great," I said, voice bouncing off bare drywall. "I've got space, actual trees, the air doesn't smell like exhaust and old pizza. The mortgage is mostly survivable. This is the American dream, just a slightly more expensive, high-interest version." On the other end she sighed, this tiny worried sound. "It's so far, Alex. What if you need something? What if you need a good cannoli? You can't get a good cannoli in the suburbs." "I'm a hydrogeologist, Mom, not a mob boss," I muttered, drifting toward the big back window. "My cannoli needs are surprisingly infrequent." That's when I heard it again. Thwack! Like a woodpecker had joined a union and found a cause. Outside, past the glass, my new kingdom stretched out in over-fertilized green, a third of an acre of aggressively perfect turf, with a half-finished deck where two construction guys were struggling with a circular saw and a power cord like they were wrestling a crocodile. And at the edge of my yard, right where the lawn met the churned-up dirt of the work site, there she was. She looked like someone had ordered suburban authority figure from a catalog and paid extra for lamination. Late 50s, hair sprayed into this blonde combat helmet that did not acknowledge humidity as a concept, beige pantsuit pressed so sharp it could slice bread, and in her hand, the weapon of choice. A clipboard. She tapped it against my brand new cedar post again. Thwack! As if serving legal papers to the wood. "Mom, I gotta go," I said quietly into the phone. "A wild Karen has appeared in my yard. I think I need to throw a pokeball at it." "Don't be fresh, Alex," she scolded, right before I hung up. I slid the glass door open and stepped out into the Virginia heat, the air thick with sawdust, fertilizer, and that faint smell of "you owe the bank money for the next 30 years. My contractors, Big Mike, who looked like a refrigerator in a work shirt, and Skinny Pete, who looked like the default setting for intern, had stopped working, just standing there staring at the woman like the IRS had come to do a surprise audit on their souls. "Can I help you?" I asked, going for that tone of, "Hey, I'm friendly, please don't sue me." She pivoted toward me with military precision, pale blue eyes scanning me from my beat-up sneakers to my messy hair. No smile. No. Welcome to the neighborhood. Just a quick evaluation like she was deciding if I violated Section 12B of something. "Are you the owner of this property?" she asked, voice smooth, sharp, a scalpel wrapped in silk. "I am," I said. "Alex Peterson, just moved in." I stuck out a hand, rookie mistake. She looked at it like I'd just used it to unclog a sewer. "Carol Miller," she said, ignoring my hand. "President of the Harmony Creek Estates Homeowners Association." There it was. She tipped her clipboard toward the white truck parked on the street. "Your contractors?" "Yeah," I said. "That's Mike. That's Pete. They're building the deck." Her lips tightened. "Their vehicle is parked 3.5 inches too far from the curb." She said it like she was reading a divine decree. "That is a clear violation of Bylaw 117C regarding commercial vehicle alignment during approved construction." I blinked, looked at the truck, looked at the curb, looked back at her. You know when your brain just does that static noise thing? "Yeah, right." I managed. 3.5 inches, wheel, nudge it. She gave a curt nod, like I'd scraped by with a C on the quiz. Then she turned to the cedar planks stacked by the house, and something in her eyes changed. "Oh," she said, almost whispering. "And this is a more serious matter." She tapped the wood pile. "Thack," like she was hitting someone's coffin. "The stain you've selected. Cedar sunset, I presume." I actually laughed. "Yeah, how did you?" "It is," she cut in, "the most common non-compliant shade selected by new residents who fail to consult the Harmony Creek architectural and beautification guidelines before commencing work." My smile died somewhere between my ears. "Cedar sunset," she went on, "is not on the approved Earth and Harmony palette." And you could hear the capital letters. Permissible shades are gentle taupe, subtle grayish, and whispering sandstone. In my head, my internal narrator woke up like, "Whispering sandstone. Does it whisper HOA rules at night? Does it tell you you're a disappointment because your deck is too happy?" Out loud, I tried to hold the line. Look, I have a county permit, I said. They saw the plans, the materials, everything's approved. She gave this tiny dry laugh that had zero joy in it. The city's approval, she even air-quoted it, is merely a suggestion, Mr. Peterson, the HOA's law. She pulled a pink slip from the clipboard and handed it to me like a parking ticket from hell. Violation notice, she announced. Fine of $150 for improper parking and $500 for unapproved staying, subject to a $1.50 per day penalty until remedied. Remedied meaning. And here she smiled. You rest on your deck in subtle grayish. Subtle grayish. I stared at the paper, then at her, then at my future deck, which had not even been stained yet and was already a crime. We value aesthetic unity here, she finished, turning away. It's what keeps our property values high and our community harmonious. And with that, she marched off, clipboard tucked like a sword, back toward her perfectly landscaped beige kingdom 2 houses down. Behind me, Big Mike lumbered closer, eyebrows drawn together. Skinny Pete hovered like a terrified meerkat. So, do you want me to nudge the truck? Pete squeaked. I looked at him, at the pink slip, at the retreating figure of Carol Miller, HOA Empress. This was supposed to be peace and quiet, I thought. The suburbs, birds, grills, kids on bikes, not minor dictatorships painted in taupe. Yeah, Pete, I said slowly, feeling something sharp and cold settle in my chest. Nudge the truck. But inside I was already thinking, I'm not repainting a damn thing. A few minutes later, I was marching across my lawn, still clutching the violation notice like a declaration of war, toward the modest ranch house next door. The one overflowing with petunias that were so violently colorful they looked fake. An older guy in a faded fishing tournament t-shirt and cargo shorts was watering them with the concentration of a surgeon. Hey there, he called, turning the hose off. You must be the new fella. I'm Dave. Alex, I said, holding up the pink slip. I think I just met your HOA president. His whole face changed, smile collapsing into this tired, ancient expression. He let out a sigh that felt like it had started in 1998. Ah, he said, eyes locking onto the paper. You've been Millard. Millard, Carol Miller, he shrugged, motioning me toward his porch. Our glorious leader. That's her welcome package. A fine and a lecture. You got off light if she only hit you for color and parking. We sat down on his back porch. He kicked a cooler open with his foot. Beer. It's 10:30 in the morning, I said. He popped 2 tops anyway, handed me one. Buddy, you're gonna need it. And as I took that cold bottle and looked back at my half-built deck, at the neat little world I thought I was buying into, and at the HOA storm cloud 2 houses down, I realized something important. I hadn't moved into a peaceful neighborhood. I had accidentally joined a very small, very polite war. Big Mike was back the next morning, hammer in hand, sweat already cutting lines through the sawdust on his arms, and I could feel it. The tension, like static in the air, waiting to pop. He nodded toward the street without looking up. She's watching again. Sure enough, Carol Miller stood on the curb, beige pantsuit crisp as an accusation, clipboard raised like a holy relic. The truck was now exactly 3.5 inches from the curb. I measured it myself, but she didn't seem impressed. She stared at the deck in progress, then at me, and mouthed something that looked suspiciously like still illegal. I waved cheerfully. She huffed and marched away. 3 days of uneasy quiet followed, the kind of silence that makes you nervous because you know someone's planning something. And then one afternoon, as I was pacing through a conference call about water flow rates in Phoenix, I saw her again, this time at the corner by the fire hydrant. It was a normal hydrant, bold red, perfectly functional, doing its civic duty by existing. But Carol was glaring at it like it had insulted her mother. Standing next to her was a terrified teenage landscaper, wrench in hand. At first I didn't process what was happening. The hose, the wrench, the hydrant. Then it clicked, and my stomach dropped. She wasn't just staring at it. She was draining it. I ran outside barefoot, the heat burning my feet, my mind just repeating one word. No, no, no. What in the hell are you doing? I yelled. The roar of rushing water almost swallowed my voice. Carol turned, calm as a saint. Mr. Peterson, she said, we're conducting a community improvement project. This hydrant is being decommissioned. It clashes with the petunias. The petunias? I shouted. That's a fire hydrant, not a garden gnome. She sighed, eyes rolling like I was being unreasonable. The committee has approved a tasteful fiberglass rock to replace it. Much more harmonious. I just stood there, watching clean, pressurized water pour straight into the storm drain. Thousands of gallons wasted, safety gone, logic gone. She gave the now empty hydrant a proud little nod, turned on her sensible heel, and left. That's when I realized I wasn't fighting a person anymore. I was fighting a belief system, a religion of beige, and its high priestess had just committed a felony for aesthetic reasons. I went straight inside, slamming the door hard enough to make the windows tremble. If she wanted a war, fine. But this was my battlefield. Water systems, flow control, this was my world. I opened my laptop, logged into the engineering network, and pulled up the municipal schematics. And what I found made my blood run cold. The whole neighborhood ran on a closed-loop system, one continuous water circuit fed by a single master valve. The hydrants weren't decorations, they were pressure regulators. Drain one, and the whole loop depressurized. Carol hadn't just destroyed one hydrant. She'd disabled every single one. If a fire broke out now, the hoses would spray air. I grabbed my phone and called Janice Riley, an old co-worker from the Water Authority, the kind of person who could solve problems while drinking bad coffee and destroying bureaucracies before lunch. Alex, she answered, if this is about that Phoenix model again, I'm still right. Janice, I said, this is worse. My HOA president is draining fire hydrants because they're ugly. Silence. Then the sound of her choking back laughter. She what? She said it clashed with the petunias. There was a long pause, then Janice's voice, still trembling with disbelief. That's a new one. But, Alex, that's illegal. Tampering with municipal water is a Class 1 misdemeanor. If it endangers people, it's a felony. Yeah, well, she doesn't believe in reality, I said. Janice sighed. Okay. Officially, I send an inspector, issue fines, cease and desist. Unofficially, her tone dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. The main valve is at the subdivision entrance, under an iron plate near the big sign. If, hypothetically, someone opened that for minutes, the whole system would repressurize. Hydrants full again, crisis averted. I grinned. Hypothetically. Purely, she said. And if anyone asks, you didn't hear it from me. Don't get caught, Alex. Paperwork's a nightmare. After the call, I just sat there, staring at the plans glowing on my screen. Carol Miller had waged her war in meetings and memos. Mine would be fought in PSI and water pressure. But then, as if summoned by my determination, another letter appeared on my door that night. A cease and desist, this time directed at my contractors. Apparently, their generator caused sonic discord. Their sawdust was an airborne pollutant, and their presence was aesthetic harassment. Big Mike was furious. Skinny Pete looked like he was about to cry. Can't risk it, man, Pete muttered. HOA's talk. We'll get blacklisted. Mike coiled his power cord like a hangman's rope. Nobody questions my work, he growled, eyes darkening. I saw my moment. Then don't let her win. She's endangering people now, not just paint colors. I can fix it, but I need help. Mike's stare met mine, slow, assessing. Then he gave one single nod. What time do we start? From across the street, Dave raised his coffee mug like a general saluting his soldier. 5 minutes later, he texted me a picture of his police scanner app, captioned, "The Eagle is listening. Godspeed, you magnificent bastard." Operation Gushing Freedom was a go. That night, under the yellow glow of the street lamps, me and Skinny Pete took a casual walk to locate the utility cover. Pete was a wreck, muttering about jail, his voice high-pitched like a kettle. Relax, I whispered. We're just walking. Normal people don't walk toward federal crimes, he hissed. The cover was there, right where Janice said it would be, half buried in perfect HOA grass. But as I knelt down, something made me glance up. Carol was in her window, phone to her ear, silhouette rigid as a statue. Ah, hell, I muttered, we've been made. Seconds later, headlights turned the corner, a police cruiser. Pete froze like a possum. We're dead, he whispered. 2 officers stepped out, one young and stern, the other older, with a mustache that screamed, "Seen it all." "Evening, gentlemen," the young one said. "Care to explain why you're staring at the ground?" Across the street, Carol stood proudly on her porch, arms crossed, enjoying the show. Time slowed. I could panic or improvise. "Officers," I said, stepping forward, "thank God you're here. I'm Alex Peterson, hydrogeologist, and this neighborhood's fire suppression system has been illegally disabled. Every hydrant's dry. I was just inspecting the damage before notifying the county." The young one blinked. "The hydrants?" "Correct," I said, words tumbling out. 0 psi across the loop. Clear violation of NFPA 24 standards. If a fire broke out tonight, your engines would be connecting to air. His confusion deepened. But the older cop, Gable, looked between me, Carol, and the hydrant, his mustache twitching like it was hiding a smirk. "She called us," he said slowly. "Because you were looking at the hydrant she drained?" "Exactly." Gable turned toward Carol's house, then back at me. "You boys just keep walking," he said deadpan. "We'll handle the rest." Then, as they got back in the car, he whispered, "Sounds like you've got a real fluid situation, son." The cruiser rolled off. Carol fumed on her porch. And I knew right then, tomorrow night, the hydrants were coming back to life. By dawn, the world was awash of gray and silence. Dew on lawns, street lamps blinking out one by one. The kind of morning where even the birds seemed to hold their breath. It was perfect. Big Mike rolled up in his old Ford, engine humming low, eyes bloodshot but steady. He killed the lights, killed the engine, and whispered like we were robbing a bank. "You sure about this, man?" "Yeah," I said, tightening my gloves. "We're putting the water back where it belongs." He grinned. "You say that like it's a revolution. Maybe it is." The steel lid to the valve cover screeched as we pried it open, that awful metallic whine slicing through the silence. I froze, listening, nothing. Then I climbed down into the hole, flashlight trembling just slightly in my hand. "Here it is," I whispered. The master valve gleamed under the beam, half buried in clay. Janice said 3 full turns counterclockwise. Mike crouched beside me, muscles flexing. "You ready?" "Do it." He gripped the wrench, leaned into it, and with a groan of metal against metal, the valve gave way. There was a deep, rising sound, a pulse that traveled through the ground, a rumble you could feel in your bones. Somewhere down the street, the hydrants coughed, sputtered, and then, whoosh, the pressure returned. For a few glorious seconds, it sounded like the neighborhood was breathing again. 65 psi, baby, Mike whispered. We sealed it up, smoothed the dirt, and melted back into the dark like 2 ghosts who'd just undone a curse. At 9 a.m., the war officially ended itself. Carol Miller, in her usual beige regalia, was hosting her beautification ceremony, a ribbon cutting to unveil her new fiberglass rock where the hydrant used to be. There was lemonade, sugar-free cookies, and a folding table covered in beige tablecloths, because of course there was. Neighbors gathered, polite smiles, plastic cups sweating in their hands. Carol raised her clipboard like a priest holding a Bible. "Today," she began, "we celebrate harmony. Clean lines. Order. No distractions." She gestured to the landscaping guy, same poor kid from before, who knelt down with a wrench, ready to disconnect what he thought was an empty pipe. But the pipe wasn't empty anymore. He twisted the top. There was a hiss, then a roar. A geyser exploded from the hydrant base, a 50-foot arc of crystal-clear, high-pressure redemption, drenching everyone within a 30-foot radius. Carol screamed, slipping on the wet pavement, clipboard flying like a bird shot mid-flight. The lemonade table flipped. Lawn chairs went tumbling. And the neighborhood, for the first time in years, laughed. Even Dave, from his porch, hollered over the chaos. "Guess harmony's overrated, huh, Carol?" I couldn't help it. I laughed too. Hard. It wasn't revenge, it was relief. The kind that shakes something loose inside you. The city showed up 2 hours later. Fire marshals, water authority, even Janice, in her sunglasses and coffee-stained uniform, strolling up like the sheriff in a spaghetti western. "Which one's Carol Miller?" she asked. The crowd pointed as one. Janice looked at the flooded street, the ruined decorations, the defeated HOA president dripping from head to toe, and just said, "Ma'am, you're under investigation for tampering with municipal infrastructure." The silence was delicious. By the end of the week, Carol was fined $5,000, stripped of HOA presidency, and temporarily banned from all community management activities. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I slept like a king. A month later, Harmony Creek was a different place. Kids rode bikes again. Dave hosted barbecues. The hydrants gleamed bright red, the color of safety, the color of rebellion. My deck stayed cedar sunset, glowing gold in the afternoon light. And nobody dared tell me otherwise. Carol eventually sold her house, moved to a condo complex with limited neighbor interaction. Rumor said she still wrote complaint letters to herself. Sometimes, I sit on that deck with a beer, watching the light bounce off the red hydrant, and I think about how close we came to living in a world where beige wins. Not on my street. See, people like Carol aren't villains because they love rules. They're villains because they forget what rules are for. They forget that order's supposed to protect life, not control it. And sometimes, when logic fails, when talking's useless, the only thing left to do is turn the valve and let the truth flow. So what would you have done? Would you have fought back like I did, or just painted your deck and moved on? Tell me down below, and if you've ever faced an HOA like this, share your story. Let's see whose neighborhood survived the madness.